Hello and welcome to another episode of Learning to Live in the Present Moment. My name is Ted Robinson and I'm your host today. Today we're going to be talking about, you guessed it, learning to live in the present moment, but how it relates to presence and the ego as it relates to good and bad judgment. And that way, hopefully, I will give you a good insight as to what we do most of our day, most of us do at least, and how we can get to presence ultimately, because that's really the ultimate place to be in my view. If we could all live in presence, there would be actually no judgment. But that wouldn't work either. Ultimately, what we need to do is we need to sort of blend the two together. Let me start right now. First off, I heard a friend of mine speaking to me. We were talking about what a harsh and cold and long winter this has been in 2013-14. And suddenly he said to me, he says, yesterday I had a day in the park with my son, and it was just so great to be outside in the park. And I thought about it, and I said, wow, now there's a really good indication of really good in his mind. But it became so much better to him because of the length and harshness of the winter. Couldn't be out in the park all that time. Who couldn't deal with anything outside except to be making snowmen, which he also told me he enjoyed. But what it comes down to is things get so much better when we've been deprived of it for a long period of time. It becomes that much better. If you've been on a diet for a long, long time and suddenly you have a strawberry shortcake or your greatest piece of Godiva chocolate, suddenly it tastes so much better because you've been depriving yourself of it. So judgment plays a major role in all of our life's decisions. And whenever we make a choice in life or a decision in life, it comes down to our ego having to judge one thing over or under another. And that's how we, most of the time, live our lives. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that at all. The judgment of the ego is perfect. We need it. How would you decide what you're going to wear each day, what you're going to eat each day, where you're going to go, what place to make a left or a right, or go straight, or back up? All these things are just judgments of the ego. And we need those things to operate in life. We need them to decide things that we think are important to us. But when the ego becomes the most important aspect of your life, you tend to get caught up in judgment, and everything is getting judged all the time. Everybody gets judged all the time. And the judgment is the ego is what keeps you in the past and the future. And so people get lost in the past. Oh, if only I'd done this instead of that. How could I have ever chosen him instead of her? Or whatever. Or they get caught up in the future. Oh, what am I going to say when I get there? How am I going to do this? I don't feel I'm good enough. Maybe I shouldn't even try. Those are all past and future judgments in a way. And what happens is we lose ourselves in the past and future and in judgment. And we get lost, completely lost. And there's the problem most people face in life. So how do we transcend the ego's judgment? How do we transcend the ego, period? Well, the best way and the simplest is to become present. When we become present, judgment falls away naturally. The past and future fall away naturally. And we become obsessed with being here now. Maybe not obsessed, we just enter the present moment. We stay here as long as we choose to. And then we can go back to the ego and make a judgment. Or then we can go back and anticipate and make a schedule for ourselves in the future. We may even go back to the past and say, you know what? I didn't do well doing it that way in the past. I'll do it that way in the future. And then come back to the present moment. That's all we're ever talking about here. Learning how to live in the present moment is learning how to mix the ego's judgment, past and future, with the present moment. That's the essence of this show. When we say learning to live in the present moment, it's learning to live in the present moment with our ego's past and future and judgment. Then we're living a life that becomes so much more fulfilling, and that's a judgment, but it'll become awesome. It will become effectively heaven on earth while you're present. Because when you're present, there's no judgment. You're just here, and everything becomes awesome. And that's not the term that everybody misuses all the time is, oh, that's awesome, that's awesome, that's awesome. It truly is awesome. It's as if you're looking at Niagara Falls for the first time or into the Grand Canyon for the first time. It's like, oh my God. And that's exactly the words. Oh my God. I'm here. I'm here at last. I'm in the present moment. And even that will be an overstatement, because when you're truly present, there'll generally be almost no thought or no thought at all. You may start out in presence and silence, and then you may learn to walk in presence, run in presence, dance in presence, play ball in presence. You can do all those things. You can even drive in presence. But it's a different state and quality of mind. I'll be back in a moment to tell you more. Don't go away. Welcome back. So one more thing about the ego that's important to remember. I have a friend that says, if you're going to play ball, you better play to win, because if you don't play to win, what's the point of playing? That's the ego. It's the competitive side. I've got to compete. I've got to be better. I've got to do this. It's all just the ego. Now again, there's nothing wrong with winning or playing to win. I don't mean it that way. What I do mean is you might want to change, however, how you view playing is I'm going to play the very best I can. Whether I win or not, I've played a great game. I've played the best game. See, whenever you compete with somebody else or another team, you're always competing against other egos that want to win too. And so somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose almost every game. Sometimes there'll be ties in certain kind of games, but most of the time there's a winner and a loser. And there's always an attachment of judgment to being a loser and one to being a winner. And we don't really have to be so attached to those definitions. We can just play the game to our best ability and see how it turns out. And enjoy the play for play. Because that's really all it ever is. It's just play. So when we can transcend the need, the requirement, the obsession to win, with just, wow, what a great game we played. Wasn't that great volley we just had? Yeah, that was really a wonderful volley. Did you enjoy it? Yeah. Do you remember who won the point? No, it didn't matter. That was the best volley I've ever had. Now that's a non-judgmental approach to it. Even though it's the best volley, you can just enjoy it. You can just enjoy the volley and not even worry about, well, I won or I lost. It's just really enjoyment of the moment. And that's what a volley is all about. If you're playing tennis or handball or ping pong or table tennis, whatever it might be. Can't think of the other name of the shuttlecock, badminton. It's just a volley. But it's a great time, isn't it? When you're playing whatever game it is, you may just want to have a good time and not worry about who wins and who doesn't. Because as soon as you do that, you take the ego out of it, you can just play and have fun. And that's ultimately the idea of all play, isn't it? Just to have fun. So, ultimately, what we want to do is we want to see the ego for what it's doing. That's all we're really about. See the ego for what it does. See yourself. Become the watcher. I always talk about the watcher being up here, just watching the ego as it falls back into its old characteristics, into its old modes of operation. I have to win. I have to win. I see. Oh, well, maybe I don't have to win. Maybe I could just enjoy this game or this volley. Then I'll have to win again. It's okay. The whole idea of this is to become more mindful of your ego. Watch it. Become the watcher. And you'll see something much different than you ever did before. Instead of seeing out of here with blinders on, I've gotta, you'll see more like this in a gaze. I call it the presence gaze versus the ego stare. Presence gaze. And it's sort of like all-encompassing, all-accepting. That's the idea of presence. It's much more accepting of everything. That's the idea of all of this. To be much more accepting of yourself and not beat yourself up with judgment. How many of you do that? I know many people in my group do that. I can't believe I did that. How could I have done that? There's nothing to judge. It's just an old voice, probably of a parent or a teacher, resonating in your mind saying, how could you have done? That's what happens. That's how life evolves. That's how we get experiences. And life goes on. And we learn from our experiences. But ultimately, it's just to go through life becoming more and more mindful of who you are, what you're doing in the moment, what your ego is up to. See it for what it is. Say, oh. And this is one of the things I've learned. I've learned to say, oh, my ego really hates when you say that to me. But I appreciate the fact that you gave me that feedback. Now, when I do that, I'm actually outing my ego. I'm saying my ego doesn't like it, but I appreciate it because I'm growing from it. Or when somebody gives you a great clap on the back and a compliment says, that was a great job. Oh, my ego really appreciates that. You're going to see people go, what'd you just say? Yeah, well, my ego really appreciates that. To me, it doesn't really much matter. What? You see, because me, I, and you, we don't really need those compliments. Our egos do. Our egos are really fulfilled by compliments. You follow? And when the ego is really happy with something, we kind of puff ourselves up and look at ourselves, look at me. But the fact of the matter is you don't need that, and you also don't need condemnation. How could you have done that? Ooh, I did that. You don't need any of that. All you need is to be here now. And then when you want to come out and be your ego, it's fine. Be the ego. It's fine. No problem. Just realize it. Recognize it when you're in your ego. Ha, look at that. My ego puffed all up because somebody gave me a compliment. Oh, look at that. My ego's dropping me way down in a hole because somebody found fault with me. That way, you and your ego become separated and you start to become the watcher that watches the ego with its little play. Everything is a play to the ego. It's always the judgment or the past or the future. It's always doing something, playing its little games. And when you can see it, when a part of you comes up and says, I see what you're up to, it'll go, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, we don't want to be prejudiced anymore. I don't want to compete all the time. I don't have to win every time. And all of a sudden, things start to shift and change. And the ego doesn't play the large role that it may have played in the past. And suddenly you become freer and freer and freer. The more you watch the ego, the more freedom you start to feel from all the judgments, self-judgments, judging others, and all the emotions that go with it. All of that starts to fall away, and life starts to emerge in a more pure sense and evolve like a blossom. It just keeps evolving. As it does that, you can start to become more aware of yourself and more aware of how everything impacts you. And you don't always have to be put down or picked up. You can just travel through it in presence. And when you need to go into the ego, you do that. And when you're done, you come back to presence. That's the whole idea of this. These are a lot of words for a very simple act. A lot of words. And I'm sorry, this is the only way I have to convey it to you. Well, except for one thing. The way I convey presence is just to be silent with you. So before the break, I'm going to just be silent with you for a few moments and show you what my presence is like. If you want to join me, by all means, just look into my eyes and I'll look into yours, and we'll both just quiet our minds. Now, If you find your mind chattering away, just say, not now. I'm just being present. If you find your nose or your neck or your ear twitching or itching, say, I know that's you, mind, not now. I'm being present. And just be present. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. So I hope that was helpful to you, just to bring you into the break with presence. And I want to mention to you that although I talk about the ego and the past and future and the judgment and everything else, there is that part of your mind, the part that's in presence, by the way, when you're in presence. I call it the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind, because it's much larger than the conscious mind, which is where the ego resides. It's much more powerful. It's the thinker without thoughts. In other words, you can't sit there and go like this and try to think in your subconscious. You'll always be thinking in your conscious mind. But have you ever had those bursts of inspiration that just come through to you, suddenly go, wow, I got the answer to that? Or you go to bed with a question in your mind, you wake up with an answer in the morning? That's your subconscious mind at work. In fact, Albert Einstein, said that his theory of relativity, which changed our scientific world of physics, he said it came to him in a moment of inspiration. He didn't figure it out with his thinking mind, his ego mind. He didn't say, well, let's figure out all these equations. It just came to him in a moment of inspiration. And that's the way most inspired thoughts have come. They come from that deeper part of you, the subconscious, unconscious mind. And I believe that really is coming through from Spirit, from God, at a very, very deep level. And we just don't always hear it. And there's a reason we don't hear it most of the time, because the voice of the subconscious or the unconscious, or if you will, God, is very small and quiet. It's not that booming sound of God. It's very quiet. And it will not interfere or interrupt with the ego's mind chattering away all the time. It will just it won't interrupt. It will wait for you. So what this is all about, what we're speaking here, what I'm always speaking about, is giving yourself the opportunity to be able to hear that inspirational voice. You might want to call it intuition. But you have to quiet that chatterbox of a mind, the ego mind, first. That's constantly interrupting, constantly saying, I have the idea, competing, getting lost in the past, getting lost in the future, but not being here now. When you can finally be present, when you choose to be present, everything shifts, it changes, and that small inspirational voice comes forth. Not so much because it suddenly comes forth, it's always been there. I notice I have a clock in my room here where I video this, and when I can't hear the clock right now, but if I go quiet or silent like this, now I hear it. There it is, it's clear as a bell. But while I'm talking, I can't hear that clock at all, because my voice is overwhelming, it's overbearing it, it's just completely obliterating it to my sense of hearing. When I'm silent, wow, that sounds large, sounds bonk, donk, donk. I can hear it clearly. It's the same thing with the voice in your head. The inspirational, godlike voice is always there. It's just quietly in the background, just like the clock. And when you're talking and everything that's going on, you can't hear it. But when you're quiet, it becomes very apparent, very obvious, and that's where the inspirations of life will come to you. There's so much awaiting you in presence. It's amazing. But I can't explain it because it just is there. It'll be different for you than it is for me and for somebody else. It's always unique to you. But I can tell you, the one thing is that everything is available to you. So learn how to balance your life with ego and presence, and you'll find the inspiration to do many, many more things than you've ever done before. You'll find more peace in your heart and your mind, and life will become much more joyful, much more awesome in the truest sense of the word. As a result of all that, you'll find yourself longing to return to presence more and more often. And that's how you'll learn to live in the present moment, because you'll want to. You'll see and feel and experience that voice, that inspirational voice will come to you in quiet, in silence. When you quiet that left brain, that conscious mind, that ego mind, when you finally quiet it down, suddenly there are the inspirations of life awaiting you. So I hope this has been helpful today for you. I try to share everything that I learn with you, and hopefully we'll all live better for it. By the way, every Wednesday night we have a EFT, meaning Emotional Freedom Technique, Borrowing Benefits group right here. We take the lights down and put them in behind, and I lead a group right here at our Center for Inner Healing. You can participate if you wish. It's at 7 to 9 p.m. on Wednesday evenings. It's $20. Nobody's turned away. Everybody's welcome. And even beginners are welcome. And we do all kinds of work here that are very, very beneficial to people, including presence. And we'll show you actually how to become present in person right here live. The other thing you can do is find more information about that in our Sunday night tapathon, which we do at 7 o'clock on Sunday evenings as well, on our centerforinnerhealing.com website. That's Center for, F-O-R, Inner, I-N-N-E-R, Healing, Healing.com. It's all one word, by the way. And you'll find out about our call every Sunday night, and that's going to be on Google Plus in the near future on the Hangouts. So find out from our website all about it. We're sharing everything for free right now. All the information's out there. We want to share it with you. We hope you'll share it with others once you get it. So that's it for today. We hope to see you next time, same place, as we learn to live in the present moment together. Have a wonderful day.